What's up, YouTube? Sandy Golston back here with a March 2020 wrap-up of the books that I've read here as I continue my Goodreads challenge. So, in the month of March, I set a reading goal of 6 books that I wanted to complete. Now, granted, for some people, that's probably not a whole lot of books, but for me, that actually constitutes a pretty good month of reading, and I felt pretty good about that. So, it would set a record for the most amount of books that I've read so far in calendar year 2020, and I was able to achieve that goal of 6 books read and actually top it by 1. So a total of 7 books read, and included in that 7 books is my first 5-star rating of the year 2020. So an exciting month of March for reading, and I'm looking forward to getting into the books that I read and just giving you a little bit about each of these books, some a little bit more, some a little bit less, but it was all in all, again, a great month of reading, and I'm looking forward to sharing that with you right now. So my first read of the month was Foul is Fair by Hannah Capin, and this was a good book that was really enjoyable for me. It features a traumatic event that leads to a plan for revenge, and it's actually a modern telling of Macbeth, which was exciting to me, and I actually didn't even realize that until I had actually read the book, and I think I was probably about 3/4 of the way through the book, and then I read something that said that it was I actually took a peek at some of the reviews and said that it was basically a modern retelling of Macbeth, and so that was exciting. As you can probably tell, I didn't read Macbeth. Maybe I should have read it, but this was really good. Characters were really interestingly drawn. The characters were interestingly drawn, and it really gets to the heart of what sparked the need for revenge, and you get the foul is fair, and it really is in some ways a pretty dark story, but yet at the same time it's a compelling story. One of these books that once you start reading it, you just are like, man, I cannot stop reading this, and I felt that way too. It was just really a fast-paced read. So I'm going to read you a little bit of the inside cover. Jade, Mads, Jenny, and Summer rule their glittering LA circle. Untouchable, they have the kind of power people envy. Every party is theirs, and the world is at their feet. Until the night of Jade's Sweet 16, when they crash a St. Andrew's prep party. The night the Golden Boys choose Jade as their next target. Sworn to revenge, Jade transfers to St. Andrew's and plots to destroy each boy one by one. She'll take their power, their lives, and their control of the prep school's hierarchy, and she and her coven have the perfect way in, a boy named Mac, whose ambition could turn deadly. The night of the 16th. I'm going to read the inside cover just to give you a flavor for what the book was about. Okay. Jade, Mads, Jenny, and Summer rule their glittering LA circle. Untouchable, they have the kind of power people envy. Every party is theirs, and the world is at their feet. Until the night of Jade's Sweet 16, when they crash a St. Andrew's prep party. The night the Golden Boys choose Jade as their next target. The night they pick the wrong girl. Sworn to vengeance, Jade transfers to St. Andrews and plots to destroy each boy one by one. She'll take their power, their lives, and their control of their prep school's hierarchy. And she and her coven have the perfect way in, a boy named Mac, whose ambition could turn deadly. Foul is Fair is a bloody, thrilling revenge fantasy for the girls who have had enough. Golden Boys, beware. Something wicked this way comes. It was just a really powerful and compelling read. It's like it's kind of addictive. Like it's like a guilty pleasure. Like once you start reading it, you just cannot stop. and just there's a lot of kind of interesting praise here on the back cover. An unapologetic feminist battle cry. A gorgeous, scorchingly emotional novel will slice you to the bone. Fierce, vicious, and electric. This book roars back. Bloody, brilliant. And it was just a book that, again, once I started reading it, I just could not stop reading it. Just again, really compelling. I gave it 3.5 stars. I was really close to 4, but it's still a really solid read. Definitely would recommend it if this is your cup of tea. It's a really compelling and fast read. You'll blitz through this really quick, and I think it'll definitely hold your attention from start to finish. Foul is Fair by Hannah Capin. Next up, I went the nonfiction route, and I read How to Be a Great Boss by Gino Wickman and Rene Boer. And it's really important for me, and I do like to read some nonfiction books here and there, especially books related to professional development, because I think it's really important, whether you've made it to the highest level or you're working your way up to the highest level, that you continue to grow and develop from a personal standpoint as well as from a professional standpoint. And so I do like to every once in a while pick up books like this that really help me to grow and become better as a professional, and to hopefully continue to grow and become better as a leader. And so this was a really solid read. I'm gonna read a little bit of the back cover. If your employees brought their A game to work every day, what would it mean for your company's bottom line? And so a lot of it, again, is motivational tactics and things that are proven to be successful for leaders inside of organizations, or people who are aspiring to be leaders within organizations. So this was one that you can see that I started to do some tabbing right there, some interesting points that I decided to highlight as I was reading through this book. And some of it was things that I've read and heard in other books for professional development, but yet at the same time, even if you see something that you've already seen in another book, in a current book that you're reading, or a more recent book that you're reading, hopefully it'll reinforce that message within you, so that the next time you read it, it just continues to reinforce and strengthen that message, and so it becomes hopefully habit forming for you. So really solid read here. I ended up giving it 3 stars. Back on the fiction front, I decided to go back to an author that I've read in the past and I've really appreciated in the past, a book that I read years ago called Shocking Pink. And the author is, of course, Erica Spindler. And the latest Erica Spindler book that I chose to read is The First Wife. And this was a really interesting read. It was a fast read. I actually posted about this on my Instagram channel. And one of my friends that I helped introduce actually to Erica Spindler, she recommended this book, said it was a really good book. It was a really good read. And I agree. I really enjoyed it. It started off really fast. It kind of grabs you right off the bat. With kind of a whirlwind romance, and then it sets you on the path, and then you start to see these characters as this quick marriage that's come together. And our character Bailey Brown, she goes into this foreign environment with this man that she's fallen in love with quickly, and she has to get to know all these people, and then the mystery is there, and it's kind of like this cloud that's like hovering over everything, and then the mystery just kind of thickens, the plot thickens, and you see what Bailey goes through, and as she tries to solve this mystery while at the same time protecting herself and trying to protect the ones, or at least the one that she has grown to love. But this is really compelling. I really enjoyed reading it. Very fast read. Really cool cover art. I really like that with the lady right there in the dress, and she's looking over her back shoulder right there as she's running, and she's running barefoot through something right there. I don't know if it's a barn or something right there. It could be hay on the ground, but you can see like fear, intrigue, suspense right there. So really solid cover art right there. Simple yet powerful at the same time. So really enjoyed this one. I gave it 3.5, very close to 4 stars. I could easily round up to 4 stars, but really enjoyed this book. Erica Spindler is as a writer that I know that I can go to, and I can feel really good about the kind of books that she's going to deliver. Next up for me was 1984 by George Orwell, and that was one that I really was excited to read. I'd seen it many times in the past. We actually had a copy of it in my house when I was growing up, and I always wanted to read it, but I never got around to it. But it was really fascinating because I didn't read a physical copy of the book, but what I did do is I started listening to it actually on YouTube, and it was pretty powerful. It's a dystopian story that talks about a period where the government is kind of overreaching and really taking control of things. Big Brother is watching you. There's censorship going on, and it just really is kind of powerful. It's amazing how that book was in a lot of ways just ahead of its time when it was written, and I really appreciated it. It was fun to read it, or I should say fun to listen to it, and I think because retention is better for me when I actually read it with my eyes as opposed to listening to it with my ears, I'm thinking that I might actually pick up a physical copy of it, or perhaps see if I can buy the digital copy of it so I can have a chance to actually read it and hopefully reinforce it, because it felt cool to listen to it, but I definitely would be interested in actually reading a physical copy of that book, 1984. I did end up giving it 4 stars, but maybe put a little bit of an asterisk by it because I would like to actually read the physical copy. But definitely, as classics go, it was an important read, and I look forward again to maybe checking that out again. But that's 1984 by George Orwell. For my next book, I decided to go to an author that I've read in the past, but honestly, kind of the distant past. I haven't read Stephen King in a long time, but as I was going through Meijer, the store Meijer, and I went past the book section, and I happened to pick up Joyland, and I thought, it sounds like an interesting book. It's a hard case crime novel, and so interesting kind of cover art right there, with the face of the woman right there. But I'm going to read just the synopsis of this book, the description of this book, because it's a really short description, but it's very powerful. It's only 2 sentences actually, but the first sentence really gives you a great feel for what the book is about, and then the second sentence kind of reinforces that, and it's really just a great synopsis of the book. So, college student Devin Jones took the summer job at Joyland, hoping to forget the girl who broke his heart. But he wound up facing something far more terrible: the legacy of a vicious murder, the fate of a dying child, and dark truths about life, and what comes after that would change his world forever. So I really, that grabbed me right off the bat. So some themes that I really like: college student. I work on a college campus, and so when I see stories about college or college students or college student life, those are stories that kind of grab my attention in a lot of ways. And then you got summer job at Joyland. Those are things that just kind of just sounded interesting to me. And here's some other little nuggets that are on the back cover. All-time best-selling author Stephen King returns with a novel of carny life and death. Life is not always a butcher's game. Sometimes the prizes are real. Sometimes they're precious. So just some interesting tease going on there with this particular book. I ended up giving Joyland 3 stars. It was a little bit tough to read because it's if you look through it, it's really not necessarily broken up in chapters. It is kind of divided in chunks with these little hearts right here to kind of separate different sections. And so I'm one of those readers that I really like chapters, particularly short chapters are better. It just gives me like a feeling that I'm accomplishing something when I read each chapter, and it's like You read the chapter and then you get a rest, and then you come back energetic for the next chapter. It's kind of like a game, like a basketball game. You go hard in the first quarter, you get a rest. Then you go hard in the second quarter, you get a rest at halftime. Then you go hard in the third quarter, then you get a rest, and then you go hard in the fourth quarter, and you feel accomplished as you start to break it down into segments, and you win the first quarter, and you win the second quarter, you win the third quarter, you win the fourth quarter, and hopefully you end up winning the game. And so I do like chapters, and so this not having chapters was a little tougher for me to read, but at the same time I really enjoyed it. So my first foray back to Stephen King in a long time. I do have a number of other Stephen King books, including some that are behind me, that I hope to get back to here in the not too distant future. Next up is, actually, I'm going to go in a reverse order here. Next up is the last book that I read in the month of March. I actually finished it on March the 31st, and that is Reputation by Sara Shepard. And this was a very interesting book. Again, I'm going to read a little bit of the back cover right here so you can see some of the themes of why I got into this book. Aldrich University is a polished and prestigious institution, home to an elite student body and a top hospital. But a hack of the entire faculty, staff, student, and alumni email accounts reveals the lies lurking beneath the school's perfect veneer, and rumors and scandals explode. The backlash to the new revelations turns lethal when a handsome doctor winds up dead. In a community where everyone has something to hide, the women of the town must figure out who the killer among them is before someone else is murdered. Told from multiple points of view, Reputation is a perfectly plotted story of intrigue, sabotage, and the secrets we keep, and how far we go to keep them hidden. Now, I will say this was a pretty fast read. I was able to kind of gobble this up relatively quickly, at least by my standards, relatively quickly. It has a twist at the end. The ending, I doubt that anybody will be able to say, "Oh, yeah, I saw that coming." I just doubt that anybody will really be able to say that. Some people will. People always do, no matter what the twist is. They're like, "Oh man, yeah, I saw that coming." I'm like, yeah, right. Seriously. But this was a really good, compelling read. It's kind of feministy, if you're into that. But it also, at the same time, it's a good mystery. It's a really interesting plot, but definitely has a touch of feminism in it, which I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but it was a really, really good read. I'm glad I read it. I did enjoy it. Again, set on a college campus, a murder mystery, and a plot twist. Not much more you can ask for. I ended up giving this one 3.5 stars. And last but certainly not least is my 5-star book of the month. And it's not the last book of the month that I read, but it certainly was the best and most significant book that I read this month, and actually so far in 2020. And that 5-star read is My Dark Vanessa by Kate Elizabeth Russell. This is a very, very powerful book, and it deals with a relationship between a teacher and a young student at a prestigious prep boarding school. And this book can be very, very triggering. And so be sure that you want to read this book before you really jump into it, because it's definitely not for everybody, and it's going to be uncomfortable for you in a lot of spaces. And in some ways, probably from start to finish, this book is going to be very uncomfortable. It is incredibly well written, and not even just for a debut novel. It's just tremendously well written, very compelling. It has multiple timelines. It has a past timeline going back to Vanessa's high school experience, and then it has a present timeline where I believe she's in her early 30s, and she deals with her situations during those two timelines, and it's just a incredibly well written and just compelling. Like, once you start reading it, you just literally cannot stop reading it. And there's a quote here on the front cover from Gillian Flynn: "Brilliant and stunning, an absolute must read." And I just could not agree more. It just was so compelling. It just grabbed me right off the right off the bat, and it just hooked me here. And here's actually, I was trying to figure out where the quote from Stephen King is. My Dark Vanessa is a hard story to read and a harder one to put down. A well-constructed package of dynamite. Just very, very well said. Here's a little bit from the inside cover. Exploring the psychological dynamics of the relationship between a precocious yet naive teenage girl and her magnetic and manipulative teacher. A brilliant, all-consuming read that marks the explosive debut of an extraordinary new writer. Just a fantastic book. Not for everybody, so be sure that you want to read it because it is triggering in some places, but it's a powerful read, and I think if you can handle it, if you're up for it, it's certainly going to be, I think, even though we're still early in 2020, I think it's going to end up being one of the top reads of 2020. My Dark Vanessa by Kate Elizabeth Russell. 5 stars for me. So there you have it, my reading for the month of March 2020, just a tremendous month of reading and some really good books, some compelling stories, some of them with incredible plot twists, some books that are triggering, including a book that's a 5-star, My Dark Vanessa. So, yeah, that's my wrap up for the month of March 2020. And if you would be so kind, if you like what you heard, hit the like button. If you like BookTube content, if you like AuthorTube content, please consider hitting the subscribe button and joining me on these BookTube and AuthorTube journeys.